Okay. Hello, feller and fellerettes, and welcome back to my stinky little landfill. And today we are going to be talking about some disturbing stuff in the spirit of Halloween. You've heard of Dahmer or John Wayne Gacy or maybe even Carl von Cosel, the guy who slept with his dead wife for 7 years? Well, while researching him, I discovered Edward Theodore Gein, aka the Ghoul of Plainfield, the Plainfield Butcher, or the Grandfather of Gore, which to me is kind of the most badass name for a serial killer. His gruesome crimes gained worldwide notoriety, inspired some books such as Psycho's Norman Bates, Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes, this man inspired Leatherface. So if things like this interest you, get comfy, grab a snack, and let's jump into this dumpster fire. Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was the son of George and Augusta Gein, and Ed was the younger of two sons, his older brother being 5 years older, named Henry. Augusta supported the family through a successful grocery business, and she despised George for being an alcoholic. She felt he was worthless and gave him no part in raising the two boys. Their mother was fervently religious and preached to her sons about the immortality of the world, and she would tell the Gain boys the evils of drinking and how women are promiscuous and instruments of the devil. Augusta was on to something, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie, guys. She was on to something there. She would read the Bible to them, and she would kind of focus on stories surrounding death, murder, and divine retribution. So, some big, dark stuff there that she would talk about to the boys. As a child, a growth on his left eyelid caused Gain to have a lazy eye, and at the age of 7, he witnessed his parents slaughter a hog behind the shed of the family store. Ed experienced an ejaculation upon viewing this. Okay, I have been around when we slaughter hogs. Whenever our family does butchering and stuff for the years, I've never came myself because I watched him shoot a pig, alright? This man was demented, ladies and gentlemen. At the age of 8, the Gaines moved to Plainfield, Wisconsin to a 195-acre farm because Augusta wanted to move away from the immortality of the city and all the sinners that inhabited it. The closest neighbors were almost a mile away, and Augusta took advantage of this isolation to shield the boys from outside influence. So she was kind of like, raising up the way she wanted to. She didn't take influence anywhere else. She wanted to make sure the boys were exactly how she wanted them to be. They attended grade school at Rocha Cree, a small one-room school with 12 students. Ed excelled as a reader, but was kind of average in everything else. And his timidity and lazy eye caused him to be isolated and rejected at school. In addition, he spoke somewhat strangely due to a lesion on his tongue. When Ed did try to make friends, Augusta would hit him and hit him pretty hard. Also, she verbally mistreated both sons because she thought they would turn out like their fathers. Fucking failures. Okay, this man was lazy. Their father was lazy. He didn't work or nothing. He just drank all the time. And that's not good. Very bad. Ed's father would frequently beat him in the head until his ears began to ring, and he would cry whenever he got home after being teased by this kid. So this kid just did not have it all around, whether it was at school, at home, anywhere he went, he was kind of in the shit, okay? At the age of 12, Ed was caught by his mom jerking off, masturbating in the bathtub. She grabbed his genitals and called them the curse of man. So that's the type of woman she was, if that says anything. When Ed turned 21, his mother made him and his brother promise to remain virgins, so no cooter for this playboy. Alright, he wasn't getting none on the back end. It was just shitty all around. Ed's father became an helpless invalid and was completely dependent on his family that feared and hated him. George was no help on the farm and drank away much of the family earnings, so he didn't do shit. They were making all the money and he'd just go and buy booze. I mean, this guy was a piece of shit, okay? And at 66, he did eventually pass away from pneumotic fluid on his lungs. Fuck. I can't pronounce shit. George passed away from pneumotic fluid on his lungs. Augusta frequently spoke of him going to hell and blamed the death on his vulnerability. Ed and Henry started working odd jobs, usually as like handymen, things of that nature, you know, fixing sinks, going around, helping out, and just doing shit like that just to help the family. Ed worked as a babysitter a lot, which is really fucking weird. Okay, if I found out some guy, I mean, surely they didn't know, right? I mean, if some guy was fucking jizzing in his pants because he watched a hog whenever he was a kid get killed, I'm not letting that motherfucker watch my kids, but surely no one knew about this, I'm assuming. The reason he babysat a lot was because children were simpler for him to relate to, and he also valued their company. They didn't really have a bad name for themselves around, you know, they were kind of just seemed like normal guys, you know, they'd go around, help out, be handymen, babysit kids for some fucking reason, and just, they seemed pretty normal. In 1942, at the age of 36, Ed needed to go to Milwaukee for a physical to remain eligible for the draft. The development on his eyelid, which partially obscured his eyesight, led to his rejection. He had never traveled so far from home, and this was the only occasion he would do so. So he genuinely stayed around the house, you know, didn't really go nowhere. This guy was kind of a stay-at-home kind of guy, you know. In 1942, at the age of 38, Henry publicly criticized their mother since he did not share Ed's devotion to her. What Henry saw to be Ed's unhealthy relationship to her was causing him concern. So bro thought he was fucking, his brother was fucking his mom probably. Ed was frightened and shocked by this comment. Later that year, while he and Ed were battling a rogue fire on the marshland next to their home, Henry passed tragically, suddenly, and mysteriously at the age of 43. Ed led police straight to Henry's body after claiming that he was unable to find him. So he said, I don't know where the fuck my brother went. He died mysteriously, but yet he led him straight to where his body was. So they were like, what the fuck is going on here? Obviously something's up. Since Henry's body had not been in contact with the fire and his skull was severely damaged, the apparent cause of death was not consistent with fire-related injuries. Asphyxiation was indicated as Henry's cause of death on the county coroner. The idea of foul play was rejected by the police. They didn't think Ed was able to murder someone, and Augusta became faint and sickly long after Henry's death and had to be hospitalized. Augusta had suffered her first stroke. In 1945, at the age of 39, Ed's reading, which included numerous books about human anatomy, grave robbery, and head shrinkage, caused Augusta to worry. Can you blame his poor mother? I mean, she's a Christian woman watching her son read about fucking grave robbery. Of course this woman's gonna worry. I mean, she worried so much at the age of 67, Augusta passed away to complications following a second stroke. In response, Ed boarded up his mother's bedroom so it might be kept in a museum-like state, just like it had been during her lifetime. Ed grew more and more insane. He was now living alone, and while the rest of the house deteriorated, he left her room tidy and clean. Due to extreme loneliness and what he subsequently said were strange visions, Ed started going to the cemetery where his mother was buried 18 months after Augusta passed away. He began uncovering bodies after multiple trips, and his mother's body was the first one he retrieved. Ed took her head and shrunk it in the manner his book described, twisting it off with his bare hands. Okay, this man tore his mother's head off. And this was the start of Ed's quote-unquote expeditions. Ed started visiting up to 40 graves between 1947 and 1951. He usually left without causing any trouble, but on at least 9 of those occasions, he pulled off coffins of middle-aged women who had just been buried. He had been going through obituaries to find these women. Alright, so he was hunting down where these motherfuckers were buried, digging their fucking corpses up, and taking them home with him. He said, I'm saddle packing these bitches. After obtaining what he desired, he would retrieve the graves that had been violated. Ed claims that he never had sex with the human remains because, quote, they smelled too bad. Alright. That seems a little fishy to me, if you ask me. I mean, this motherfucker was digging up bodies constantly, and he didn't fuck them, and this motherfucker, that sounds really bad. I would never, if this motherfucker is insane, okay? I'm not insane. I'm just saying that sounds like a blatant lie. Alright? In addition to masturbating, his compulsions and appetites still classified as necrophilia. So, he didn't fuck them, guys. He just jerked off on their faces or something. Around this time, the number of missing people in the area also started to rise, leaving police baffled, okay? They were confused. They didn't know what was happening. All these bodies were being dug up. What's happening, alright? In 1951, Ed dug up Eleanor Adams, a 51-year-old woman who had been buried earlier that day, so a fresh body, alright? In 1953, 15-year-old Evelyn Hartley was abducted while watching Family Friends. Her broken eyeglasses, blood stains, and footprints were among the evidence of a fight that her father discovered. 2 miles southeast of La Crosse, her bra and underwear were discovered, and 4 miles away, a bloodied pair of men's pants. Her remains were never located, and Ed is believed to be the culprit. In 1954, Plainfield Tavern owner Mary Hogan, with whom had earlier been transfixed, disappeared from her establishment. Police suspected foul play because of the blood and an empty bullet casing on the floor. Ed later revealed he had been hanging out with her, drinking and whatnot. He pulled the blinds, put a .22 caliber to her forehead, and pulled the trigger. The day after the murder, while working with Elmo Ueek, I think that's how you say it, he admitted to killing her, and he said he had her hung up at his house. Elmo dismissed this statement, thinking that he was lying. He was like, what? No way. Alright. The day of Gein's downfall was November 16th, 1957, the first day of Wisconsin's firearms deer shooting season. Gein traveled to the Warden's hardware shop in Plainfield to purchase some antifreeze. He killed the store's owner, Bernice Warden, who was 58, by stealing a .22 caliber rifle from the display. Her throat was cut, and he pulled the body out the back and loaded it into the truck. Later that day, Warden, a well-known local who had operated the Plainfield hardware shop since her husband's death in 1931, was being sought by sheriff deputies from many counties. Police visited Gein's 195-acre farmstead twice to speak with him after seeing his automobile in the community that day. He wasn't at home. On the second visit, Washoe County Sheriff Arthur Schley was shocked when he looked inside a shed that Gein used for a summer kitchen. "Oh God, she's there," he said. Warden's body was hanging upside down by the ankles, dressed out and gutted like a butchered deer. The local Green Lake County Sheriff's Department, Captain Lloyd Schufister, reported that a body was hanging by the ankles in the woodshed. After cutting the ankle tendon, a rod was inserted through it. A block and tackle pulled the body up in the air. The head was absent and the body was fully clothed. Sheriff Shealy went to throw up outside. The police also discovered masks, a box of organs, furniture constructed of bone and skin, and human skulls attached to Ed's bed supports. The skinny part of the head had been removed from the skull and preserved was what the masks were. Additionally, a belt with nipples dangling from it and a whole suit composed of women's flesh pieces, complete with a breast-attached vest, were discovered. Ed first kept quiet before confessing to the murders of Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. Miss Worden died from a single gunshot wound to the back of her head, according to the autopsy report. The 195-acre agriculture property was searched for more than a week. The results of lie detector tests were made public, and the disappearance of Eleanor Adams was also Ed's fault. Having been accused of robbery, Ed was brought before a court. To assess his sanity, the murder accusation was postponed. Ed is schizophrenic and a sexual psychopath, according to the psychologist and the psychiatrist who interviewed him. They opened the graves that Ed was accused of robbing. On Ed's farm, deputies discovered other bones buried in a trench. One skull said to be of a man that contained a gold tooth. Miss Adams' burial was discovered to be deserted. In a Central State Hospital interview with Dr. E.F. Schubert, Ed complained of memory problems. Dr. E.F. Schubert conducted an interview with Ed, and Ed had an abnormally magnified attachment to his mother, according to Schubert. A package from Central State Hospital informed the judge that Ed was mad not to be admitted there forever. He was recommended to Central State Hospital after being found legally insane. Ed's farm and personal belongings were set to go up for auction on March 30th, but were destroyed in an early morning fire. Ed was found able to face trial after 10 years at the facility, and the trial process started. The preliminary procedures, which included submitting briefs, appointing lawyers, and suppressing evidence, took 9 months to complete. The trial itself began and lasted for a week or so. Although Ed was convicted of first-degree murder for the shooting of Bernice Worden, the court also determined that Ed was not sane on the day of the incident. As a result, the court determined that Ed was innocent due to insanity. Ed was taken back to Central State Medical Center, and Ed submitted a petition to the Washoe County Clerk of Courts, arguing that he was now completely competent and there was no need for him to stay in a hospital. After considering Ed's petition, a judge mandated a re-examination. Ed was sent back to the hospital when the judge denied his petition. Ed was transferred to Madison's Mendota Mental Institute. In the Mendota Geriatric Ward, Ed, who was senile, passed away from respiratory failure following a protracted battle with cancer. Many people in the hospital thought he was a model patient, always helpful and mildly mannered. With just 4 people at 6 in the morning, Ed was laid to rest next to his mother in the Plainfield Cemetery. At the end of his life, there was a total of 7 victims, 2 confessed and 5 suspected. He started killing at the age of 38, and all of his victims were only female. The type of killer he was considered an organized lust. These are homicides in which offenders stab, cut, pierce, or mutilate the sexual regions or organs of the victim's body. He was caught on November 16th, 1957, and he was convicted November 14, 1968. While gaining notoriety in all of his gruesome murders, this man went from jizzing himself while watching animals being slaughtered to being the real-life Leatherface. He became a small sliver in human history, but a big part in Plainfield, Wisconsin's. I've been Jag, and thank you for coming along with me in this gruesome journey. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and stay stinky. Bye-bye. Thank you again to my beautiful girlfriend for helping me with this video. See y'all.